Hello team and welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. In a 1v1 our two players, in blue Kartoffelman and in red Clutchy. Clutchy's gone for a cross spawn pick here, picking the two water territories, one of which has an energy source so that they can have infantry on the leftmost island and also on this main island. 3 factories immediately from red with the follow-ups of a barracks and a dock. And in the north in blue, Kartoffelman's gone 2 towns immediately with the pre-construction money, so they're already built. 2 barracks, a dock building a transport boat, and a lumber camp for some industry. And if we go top down, red has a little bit of an advantage in the sense that they are on the larger landmass. There's more economy here with all the different territories. And there are technically 3 cities on this main landmass in comparison to just the one possible city for blue to build. So we'll have to see how quickly blue gets across this main island and where they decide to land, potentially over here, which would be the shortest distance between this transport boat and the landmass. And it's also important to note that there are multiple trade routes on this map. 2 on the main, it's all 4 are on the main island, but these 2 relatively close to red's starting position. And then it'll be more difficult for either player to really take these 2 trade routes. The ones closer to Kartoffelman's starting side of the map. For multiple reasons, mostly, it's a long trade route, so even just securing the safe passage of the merchant ships, if they were to get set up. If Clutchy could set this up, then red merchant ships, would be going super close to the coast, so blue could dig in some artillery and potentially shut that down just in general. And for Kartoffelman to take this, they'd have to land both in the top left here and then also in the bottom right. This is starting to get set up. We'll see how well blue can get entrenched here on this eastern part of the main island, this main landmass. Blue's going for some more economy with these farms. And it's just artillery and infantry for Clutchy at the moment. And a cruiser out of this red dock. There's also a bunch of trade routes in the back, which super favors Clutchy because it'll be very difficult for blue to actually get back here. Technically, Kartoffelman could transit this with Navy, going all the way down the back here. In the north, not so much because this landmass blocks it off. So in general, very safe eco potential for Clutchy. And it is 5 trade routes down in the bottom here between all these towns and ports. So right off the jump, a pretty desirable starting position for red, I think, in this game. Relatively safe refinery for Kartoffelman behind their island, but of course this could be transited by red boats, both to the left-hand side of the island and the right-hand side. And we just wait for a build-up here. And both players, when they spawn on different landmasses, different islands, generally we see a slower build-up in the game. Eco-wise, 546 for blue and 360 for red. And it's really these towns and industries for blue that has given that eco boost. Because Clutchy, as of yet, has not built any economy on their side of the map. The 4 infantry for Kartoffelman are going to be able to successfully take this territory, and we'll see if Kartoffelman immediately starts building producers, barracks and factories, maybe an airport potentially. That would be a little bit of a surprise, but blue will likely build at least 1 building over here, knowing that they have to contest this main landmass. Otherwise, Clutchy will just take it all and then have more money. And this is a game of money. 3 SAMs on the way for Clutchy now. And a second cruiser. Making good progress on this back little island. And then, of course, to the northwest. And a second cruiser for Kartoffelman here. Also going for a sub-pen. Submarines could be very strong for Kartoffelman in the sense that there's only one way for these boats of red to get into play on the main part of the map. between Kletchy and Kartoffeln's base, and it is through this southern little pass. So a collection of subs and maybe some other boats could stop the Red Navy from moving out. Here's that barracks that we were talking about or expecting to see. Kartoffelman does put it down. And still transiting a bunch of infantry, and there will be some commandos with this relatively shortly. Blue finishes all the industry on this island that they start on, so the city could be built whenever Kartoffel gets 450 income. In general, we usually see players hold off from building the city and instead invest their economy in capping territories, so putting down more producers for blue. But we'll see what happens, what both players elect to do. And Kletchy's starting to build their first industry of the game, reducing that income deficit. And income-wise, 480 for red and 616 for Kartoffel. It'll be interesting to see if red decides to build a dock on the northern side of this main island, between their base and Kartoffel's island, or just to keep to building docks in the back. And we have an impending fight between all this red artillery and infantry against a mostly infantry, well, an entirely infantry army for Kartoffel at the moment, who has not yet built a factory. Is following up with a second dock. So a large chance that blue gets naval supremacy in this game. If and when there's a fight between a red navy and a blue navy, I'd suspect somewhere around here on the map, as this red navy tries to move out from behind Kletchy's landmass. Factory now for Kartoffel. And the first refinery of the game for red to keep these boats moving. It's more SAMs out of the factories at the moment. And very interested to see when these towns go down in the back. As mentioned before, this is pretty safe eco, or that's what my read on this would be. And 5 trade routes is a substantial amount of income if red could get those set up. Kartoffel sending the 2 subs and the cruiser to cap all these water territories that are close to the coast. And then up to the northwest of the map. Cruisers for blue could be very strong here if red tries to push through this little land gap at the other end of this mountain range. Cruisers, if they just park off the coast, they'll be able to shell all the red units that try to push through here. But it is a lot of infantry for blue. We'll see if these red artillery pieces in the mountains, if they can take on this amount of infantry. The infantry are going to move more slowly through this mountain range. And we'll see if when Kletchy sees this. So this is the vision. This units get a little bit of a stealth bonus as they move through the mountains. They come into range now and come into vision. Kletchy will very slowly notice that there is a bunch of infantry behind this. This is red's vision at the moment. And now a little bit of a grouping move command from red to get all these units together to deal with all this infantry for blue, who now has a first artillery piece on the way to the front line and building another artillery piece out of this factory. And second refinery for Kartoffel. It is a lot of navy, 2 docks, pardon me, and a submarine pen. So important that blue keeps ahead of the energy needs of this play. Navies use a lot of energy. It's important to keep energy production and energy security when playing like a heavy navy game. And a relatively quick city for Kartoffel after building all of these industries. We see that Kartoffel's starting to land on the other end of this trade route. It's interesting to think whether Blue has plans to try to set up this trade route relatively quickly, and how greedy they'll get in trying to put down this town and port. And in the same way that this cruiser for Blue stops Red from pushing through towards where Kartoffel's starting to build up some producers, it'll be difficult for Blue to actually push through this mountain range if all these artillery pieces stay here. Since the infantry will move a little bit more slowly through the mountain range, giving plenty of time for these artillery pieces to open up. First town on this little back island for Klechy is on the way. And it looks like it's going to be a trade route from Klechy who sets up this other town, which is connected. And the 4 commandos for Kartoffel aren't trying to cap this one territory with the town and port on it. Instead, they're going to go for a scouting mission. Go check this town. We can see Kartoffel's vision. Knows that Klechy is all the way up here in the northwest, but doesn't really know exactly where Klechy had spawned in this game. And income-wise, 723 for Blue. And 764 now for Red. So Klechy ahead for the first time in the game. Boosted both by how much land territory Red's captured, and then also these 2 towns on the way. And a sub-pen in the back for Klechy. It's a dig-in line of infantry and artillery in this mountain, which will make it even more difficult for Blue to push through this mountain range. And I almost wonder if there's going to be an airport put down for Kartoffel. Or more, it's more just a question of I wonder how Blue is going to plan to push through this mountain range. Blue can see that there's a dug-in line of artillery, and this is how many units that Kartoffel can see, but presumably there are more there. Cruiser's taking on some infantry by land, and Kartoffel puts down the one town close to this production, which is connected to this town and port in the north where the 4 commandos are. Still not capping this territory, but it is a neutral territory. Red does not own it. And Kartoffel with the subs and the commandos. This town comes in division and they can see the port, which is relatively important. Kartoffel probably suspects that a trade route is going up at this point. And it is. So Red's going to have a trade route relatively quick. Klechy might be able to take an even further economic advantage. 893 for Kartoffel with that city online and 924 for Klechy. 2 cruisers for Red jump on this refinery. They're going to be able to destroy it before this one Blue cruiser gets home. Or rather gets back to the refinery to defend this. And Kartoffel puts down this town, which is pretty safe given how many producing buildings there are around it. It becomes one of those things that if Blue couldn't defend this town, then they probably won't be able to defend either of these producers, and then it's just a bad situation for Blue. It's very important in a kind of split map like this to at least have a foothold on your opponent's side of the map, or your opponent's island. Since over time it'll get way more difficult to set one of these up as the game goes even further. Your opponent has like airport tech with more range for air support to stop landings. So a relatively decent start from Kartoffel to get on this landmass and get situated. 3 artillery pieces along the coast. Good micro from Klechy to keep these cruisers moving out of range of these Blue artillery pieces. And they park right outside this town, and they will be able to destroy this town before these 4 submarines and 1 Blue cruiser show up. And in response to losing the refinery, Kartoffel sets up a depot to start taking some of this energy from this back refinery, which is a very smart play, I think. Because if we go top down, there's no real other suitable refinery for Blue to take besides this one that was just lost. And not really this one. This one would be more difficult to defend, I think. And in general, Clutchy keeping a lot of units at home. Potentially worried about a commando drop. Clutchy knows that there are transport boats that could land here. And 2 dots of commandos on the left-hand side of the map for Kartoffel. This one is not seen. There's not enough red units here to actually grant that visibility. And more towns for red. In the back, starting to set up this second trade route. Clutchy has a very safe second refinery right behind this defensive line in the mountains. There's also another relatively safe refinery up in the north. There's no way that boats for blue could be able to hit this. And with enough of an infantry garrison for Clutchy, it's a relatively safe refinery to hold. There's 2 more docks now for red. At the moment, building transport boats. And that's the gas for Clutchy. That's what we hear, and it is a refinery in the top left. And by this point, red's capped nearly all of this water territory in the back of the map. This is what we're looking at in a top-down view. And income-wise, 1090 for red. And 978 for blue. Still a relatively big standoff here. I think an outrageous play for blue would be to build a rocket to attack this defensive line. It could be possible. Probably not super worth it, but we'll see. And a good garrison of blue boats here to protect this back refinery. Clutchy's sending in 1 transport, 1 cruiser to try to snipe this. We hear the beep beep. That's blue running low on energy. Kartoffel luckily has this second refinery set up. And still not making a move with these commandos yet. Clutchy may have seen a commando for a split second here. It's an interesting move to just move these infantry and artillery down to this dot command. And with this many infantry and artillery, the commandos will, and they do, come in division. They're in the forest technically, so they get a little bit more stealth, but 4 commandos against this big of an army. I guess it's not really even an army, but this group of units. Commandos are going to have to back off, and good reaction from Kartoffel to do so. And this is an interesting build-up to the game. Decent navy positioning from blue to stop any red boats from getting out here. Because as we see, the red boats in the back are going to start making their way around the right-hand side of the map to bust out of this. Factory and barracks for Clutchy on this northwest part of the main island, and building a depot to start collecting this energy out of the back refinery. And still remains to be seen what the plan is for blue to get through this defensive line. And in order to win the game, at some point, red will have to transport units across from their main base to Kartoffel's island. Because there's no real way that red's gonna kind of embargo this blue island and contain Kartoffel there, because of how many boats there are for blue on the right-hand side of the map, and stopping this red navy from showing up and doing so. It is a rocket in the forest for Kartoffel, so this is the plan, to just rocket this position, then start moving the units through. By the time this rocket shows up and is able to be used, blue's going to have a pretty substantial army built up. On the right-hand side of this main island, Kartoffel's rebuilding this town. But as this goes on, Clutchy continues the eco up, building this port for this third trade route and starting to build the town for what is this? Then the fourth and fifth trade route. Completing all the trade routes in the back. And we probably expect that Clutchy has a pretty big advantage on income right now. 1217 for red. 1043 for Kartoffel. Kartoffel's building more factories. And out of energy, it is a second factory at this location. And good movement by Clutchy to pick up these commandos and make sure that they don't get loose here. And this leaves just 6 commandos sitting in this mountain range. We'll see when Kartoffel, pardon me, decides to move it. This refinery in the top hasn't been seen by blue. And there's no real change to the, distribution of the map from what we saw a few minutes ago. This is the big fight that we're looking for. Blue's getting these boats in position while going for this town on the port. Or, geez, the port on the town. And it's 6 subs, 2 cruisers, 4 missile boats for blue, and a lot of cruisers for red. So in a straight up fight, red would actually win this. And this is the power of 3 docks in the back for red. 3 docks in a sub pen, which outnumbers these 2 docks in a sub pen for blue. Both players having a little bit of an energy problem. We're hearing beep beeps from Clutchy. Kartoffel's also relatively low on gas. That's part of the reason why blue is setting up this refinery. It'll be kind of tough for blue to defend this. Luckily for Kartoffel, Clutchy's navy is out of gas, so they can't move forward right now. But this is really the last refinery that blue's going to be able to take. And I won't even say safely, because this refinery is in a little bit of a precarious position. There's no way that blue's going to be able to take this refinery, because it would be in range of artillery pieces on the coast. And Clutchy's really setting up an energy network here, building this other refinery, which would be in range of any planes that Kartoffel were to build on the main island. And we wait. And the suspense is palpable. The rocket is on the stand at this point. So we're minutes away from this being able to be used. 1331 income for blue and 1111 for red. I said that backwards. It's 1111 for blue and over 1300 for Clutchy. And more destroyers and cruisers and subs for red are moving towards this impending fight, which is going on right now. Blue's navy is out of energy. That's the black plumes of smoke we saw, so the boats are taking extra damage, 50% more damage for the next 5 seconds. And it is a numbers mismatch for blue. We'll see if Kartoffelman decides to retreat from this position or just stay fighting. The submarines are going to back up, and now the move command comes in and all the boats will try, but they are out of energy. As mentioned, this blue refinery is going to go down. We may even see a power plant get put down for blue in order to supplement the energy off of the 2 refineries, and that's what we see. And it's going to be 6 refineries, or 6 power plants, pardon me, which is the equivalent of 2 refineries that blue has put down here. Power plants being 1/3 as efficient as a refinery. And the rocket's about halfway done. And it's going to be a very strong push from Kartoffel. The reinforcements are going to be all of these units out of the 3 factories and the 2 barracks for Clutchy. So even when Kartoffel gets through this defensive line, it'll still be very difficult to continue pushing to the heart of Red's base. Probably the best thing that happens is that Blue rockets this position and then moves forward, caps a bunch of these territories, and then also digs in the mountain range and takes control of this town and industry. Subs and cruisers for Clutchy continue going forward. There is just enough energy to do this. Very slowly, Red is going to run out of the energy. It's just 3 refineries powering all this navy. For Clutchy, who finds the 3 commandos that are left over. There's no more blue commandos on the main landmass. For Kartoffel. And a very cool, all the transport or merchant ships going all the way around this island. This is a lot of economy for Red, as mentioned. 1471 for Clutchy and 1121 for Kartoffel, who nearly has this rocket complete. The cone is going on now, so any moment when this is finished, we'll see Kartoffel probably launch it here into the mountain range and then start pushing forward. And still no docks or anything for Clutchy on this side of the map between them and Kartoffel. A rocket for Clutchy as well at the edge of this forest. And the rocket clears pretty much everything out of the defensive line, probably not entirely on both the edges. But this will allow Kartoffel to push. There's a lot of money in the bank for Blue, some of which is spent on 2 more factories. The navy from Red is still very scary, and if it has enough energy, it could threaten this other refinery for Kartoffel and destroy 1, potentially 2 of the power plants that Kartoffel has made in this forest. Another rocket is on the stand for Blue. And the launch pad for Red isn't quite complete. The rocket is pretty close to the water, so if there weren't any artillery defending this, Blue's navy, if they weren't already committed to the right-hand side, could roll up to the coast and destroy that. This rocket will be nice for Clutchy when this push starts. In that, Clutchy could always just rocket this if Blue decides to dig in the mountains. There's probably enough Red units to at least delay this Blue army from getting too close to the launch pad, so Red will have a rocket that can hit some amount of Blue's pushing army through the mountains. And more production for Clutchy. Slowly seeing this Blue army move through the mountains. This is Clutchy's vision. There's enough units around to actually give vision to all of the Blue units in the mountain. There's a second rocket on the way for Kartoffel as well. So the land fight is definitely going to center around this part of the map and this mountain range. Clutchy has the rocket. There's not really enough money to actually, or rather has the launch pad, but there isn't enough money to build this rocket. It does cost 500. It's pretty expensive. And 1620 income for Blue and 1131 for Red. And I did that backwards again. Clutchy is in the lead by a decent amount. No indication that Kartoffel is going to start landing in the north. Industry being built by Clutchy. There's still a bunch of towns and another city that Red could start building. And this city, if it was constructed by Red, is within range of at least this forward rocket, maybe not this back rocket, which the second one for Blue is nearly complete. Rockets can't kill cities in one single shot. They don't do enough damage. 2 rockets, of course, are able to destroy a city. And a lot of transport boats over here now for Kletchy. Decent fodder units if this turns into an actual naval battle. And it is a lot of transport boats. I wonder if this is a little bit of an oversight. The docks have stopped. It's because Kletchy wants the money to build the rocket, so they've now afforded it. The rocket is on the stand. Second blue rocket is on its way. This could be very strong. It's probably going to get the majority of these artillery pieces. And now it's really, I mean, you can make your own guesses if blue's going to be able to push through here and get on top of the rocket. Or just in general, if this red rocket is not going to be enough to deal with this pushing blue army. So a cruiser actually can reach this refinery. The infantry, just because it's one cruiser, should be able to deal with this. This is a target command from the cruiser. But it does look like it's actually attacking this infantry, so it's not actually going to just target the refinery immediately. So Kletchy is not going to lose that. Second launch pad is now entirely complete for Kartoffel and building a rocket. The next two rockets for blue are going to be done super close to each other. So very soon Kartoffel's going to have two rockets to work with. Red is out of energy, so this is a great fight for this blue navy. And unfortunately for red, it's a lot of transport boats. If these were fighting boats, Kletchy could probably be able to push through this and then get on top of the refinery as mentioned before. This is the fight to watch. The rocket for Kletchy is now 2/3 of the way done, probably a little bit more. And this is Kartoffel's vision. The rocket is close enough and there's enough blue units that Kartoffel can see this and also the status of the rocket. So a little bit of a tense situation. There's one full dot of SAMs, but that's not really enough to shoot down a rocket, even if the rocket went over top of this group of SAMs. And it's all artillery pieces out of these blue factories. Red likely has a little bit of the artillery number advantage, at least on the front. More red artillery pieces are opened up than blue, and there's a decent concave for red. The rocket is going to help. The thing that's not going to help for red is the next two blue rockets that show up. And here come these transport boats fighting the cruiser. There are a lot of them, but of course they don't do that much damage to boats. So a little bit of a stalemate fight in that navy battle on the right hand side of the map. There's still nothing notable going on the top left. And I think really we could just center the camera here. Kletchy's rocket is going to go towards the production for Kartoffel. This is Kletchy's vision, so it's presumably this rocket is going right towards this town. And it does. It destroys the town and the port as a result. Another red rocket on the stand. Kartoffel's rocket is getting launched at the moment. And it looks like this rocket from Kartoffel is going right towards this launch pad. I guess the range is actually enough. If the back one wasn't enough on the range, the front one definitely would be. And now this becomes a huge advantage for Kartoffel. Since they're sitting on two rockets and their opponent has none, we'd likely expect to see another launch pad be built by Kletchy. And there was another launch pad built by Kletchy. It's just closer to Kartoffel's base. Probably heading towards this town. If a rocket only destroys a town, it's really, like, cost-effective wise, it's not super good. for how much that rocket is worth. It's 500 money for the investment to build the rocket. We saw this rocket by Kartoffel. Pretty decent hit on Clutchy's army. But Red still has enough units to defend against this push, at least for now. And this is a lot of barracks and factories from Clutchy in this mountain range. So Red obviously feels that they need to put down more production to deal with this blue army. It's the rockets that are the huge problem. Because even if Clutchy defends against this push and then pushes forward, it'll be difficult to gain any ground since there's going to be 2 rockets at a time that can clear it. More income for Kartoffelman with this town and port. And starting to send these commandos across in the transport boat. They're going to land right on top of all the production. At the very least, they're going to get a great scout because none of the buildings have been revealed yet for Kartoffel. Great amount of red infantry to provide a little bit of a body block for these red artillery pieces. So the blue artillery is firing at the infantry. And the red artillery pieces aren't taking any damage. There's nearly another rocket done for Kartoffel. And this will be a relatively close fight. There's 4 subs for red, a cruiser, and a destroyer, and a handful of transport boats. And income-wise, 1173 for blue, and 1827 for red. And top down, Kartoffel's made very serious gains through this mountain range. But of course, running into resistance in this field with the defender's advantage for red with how close all these buildings are. Kartoffel doesn't care, putting down these 3 industry, destroys one of the launch pads intentionally to save some amount of eco. And great play by this one submarine for the moment before posted up just outside the range of the blue boats. Kartoffel's boats go forward to destroy that one sub, and they do. The one problem for Kartoffel is that they're going to lose 2 cruisers for it. But 2 more cruisers for Kartoffel shows up, probably enough to push back all of those lighter red boats. Here comes the cruisers now for Clutchy, building only cruisers out of these 3 docks. And we gotta see if Clutchy can use this notable eco lead and turn that into a win. 3 more factories now for Kartoffel, which will help for the push and kind of get them on a little bit more parity. Now it's 6 factories for blue and 5 factories for red, pushing units into this fight. What feels like the 15th rocket of this game is on the way for Kartoffel. It will get a handful of units and potentially that mining site. And it does. No subsequent rocket on the way for blue. And this is the fragile situation for Kartoffel, is losing this navy on the right hand side. Because this could kind of snowball. Red, if they can push out of here, destroy this refinery, maybe some of these energy sources, they can go around, start destroying these towns. And in a worst case scenario, push towards the docks. Kartoffel's going to land here, but there's a lot of garrisoned units for Clutchy, who's also sitting on another rocket. And Clutchy's built this bottom refinery, which now becomes super defendable as long as more boats continue to show up to stop blue from going around the back and destroying this again. In top-down view, not much change since we last checked. Kartoffel's taking a different approach around the northern part of the map. Best thing that this red rocket could do is destroy this depot. Full of energy. Clutchy sees it. This is probably where it's going. And it is. Destroys the depot and the barracks and damages the city, but of course does not destroy it. The good thing is when you damage a building of your opponent, they actually pay income to repair that building. Submarines for Clutchy are great. Will destroy the refinery. Submarines can't hit towns since they're entirely land units, but they could destroy this port. And very slowly, Kartoffelman's just rebuilding this launch pad closer to the front in the mountains. This launch pad, the rocket, could hit all of this production for Clutchy. So Clutchy's on a little bit of a timer here to get into this mountain range and destroy this blue launch pad. Clutchy's rebuilding another rocket up here in the north. And income-wise, 1733 for red, 1367 for blue. And the 3 factories in the mountain range are now totally online for Kartoffelman, building only infantry out of all 6 of these factories. With another rocket on the stand nearly halfway done. It's 1 cruiser and 1 sub for blue against 3 submarines for red. And you can see the strength, even with 1 submarine close, they actually can't detect those 3 red subs. Now with 2 submarines close, they kind of do. I mean, you can see just how finicky it is if you have blue's vision here. Subs get kind of lost. The destroyers are great at detecting submarines, so that will definitely help Kartoffel, who's facing a lot of pressure here at the base of the mountain. All these artillery pieces are in the forest. Great concave from Clutchy. The right number of red infantry. And I now forget if there was another rocket that was used by Clutchy. Because Clutchy's rebuilding that rocket in the north of the map. Great hit from Kartoffel. This will buy more time. Red is on a mostly, like, on an entirely artillery and infantry army, so in general these units move relatively slow. So it will take them a long time to go from where they are to getting into the mountain range and trying to destroy this launch pad. It's nearly complete and ready to build a rocket. Kartoffel has enough money to do so as soon as that launch pad is finished. Red submarine for Clutchy working on that port and will be able to destroy it. And the income's 1367 for blue, 1860 for red. And this is your split on the map. Blue now has these 2 rockets on the way. This front one is going to be devastating. And you got to get in the comments to guess who won. I don't even know if we'll say it on this end screen. I don't think it does. It doesn't. I don't know who left that game. Wouldn't be able to tell you. That blue rocket in the front, probably going to be super devastating. Trades-wise, it's pretty much even. 12,186-ish between both players. Well played. Cool game. Check out the Line War Discord if you want to learn more about the game. You can check the Looking for Matches channel. Find people to play with. Ask questions. Twitch.tv/SodaQuackers. Thank you all for the support any way that you do it. Commenting on the videos, liking them, and of course subscribing helps the channel grow. But either way, thank you for dropping by. Hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, whatever it is. Thank you so much. Peace. Peace.